Every lore video on Inarius and Lilith paints their bond as tragic romance. That reading misses the weapon at its core. Then what bound her blood to his if design Inarius didn't love Lilith but used her as the key to unlock Sanctuary's fate? He co-created this world with her, then bound her blood to his design. Banished to hell by Mephisto after his fall, his obsession became a lever. A calculated move to turn her Nephalem lineage into a war tool. Did he crave her lover, her power? The Sin War's true weapon wore a heart. Inarius bound Lilith to the World Stone not to love her but to leech its power. The dimming of Nephalem blood wasn't a mistake, it was a design. Tyrael's tribunal spared Sanctuary, but Inarius turned mercy into a snare. The pact sealed a lie that survival was victory. Sanctuary's safety became a cage, its peel unwitting anchors for a weaponized legacy. The Sin War's true battlefield was never flesh, it was fate. What does it mean that salvation itself was the first sin? Inarius and Lilith forged Sanctuary from stolen Worldstone. Their pact was not love, it was leverage. He needed her blood to bind Nephalem to his design. She sought refuge from Eden's ghosts. The Sin War's first clash split their alliance, Triune against Cathedral, Chaos against Order. When Lilith slaughtered renegades to claim the Worldstone, Inarius let her win. He had already sown the seeds of her downfall. Nephalem blood in her veins became the key to his prison. Every whispered vow, every shared scar, was a calculated move to weaponize her lineage, the massacre of the renegades. A trap to isolate her power. Sanctuary's fate was written in the theft of that stone. What if the love stories of the Sin War were just blueprints for annihilation? What if Inarius didn't love Lilith but used her as the key to unlock Sanctuary's fate? The asterisk flesh of the Worldstone asterisk chapter reveals a trade, her soul for the world's survival. Pause. The line between devotion and manipulation blurs when the price is a soul. Inarius bound her to the Worldstone not as a lover, but as a catalyst. Her Nephalem blood, raw and untempered, became the forge for Sanctuary. Yet the stone's power does not create, it corrupts. By dimming the Nephalem's strength, Inarius ensured their dependence, their fragility. A garden cannot rebel if its roots are starved. The myth of their romance was a smokescreen. Beneath the poetry of stolen glances lies the cold calculus of control. He needed her blood to shape the world, then her absence to break it. Every whispered vow was a chain, every touch a test of loyalty. The Sin War's most tragic figure wasn't Lilith, it was the world she birthed. A sanctuary built on a single, poisoned promise, that humanity's survival required its own undoing. Inarius' love was never a choice. It was a weapon honed in the dark, aimed at the heart of everything she fought to protect. The grim ledger in the Book of Cain reveals a truth festering in forgotten texts. A single passage from D2's Act 5 intermission names Lilith's imprisonment not as punishment, but as design. Inarius locked her in the void between worlds after her massacre of renegades, not to spare her. To weaponize her, Nephalem blood is a key, a lock, a detonation sequence. Inarius bound her to the Worldstone's core, his beloved a living cipher for power. The iron hall of pandemonium echoes with this sin, its walls built on a lie of love. He did not create Sanctuary alone. He did not love her unconditionally. Every act was a calculation. Every whisper a trigger. The cold god's hands are stained with more than blood. They grip the hilt of a blade aimed at the cradle of his own making. Lilith's chains are the Worldstone's fuse, and Inarius, the co-author of Sanctuary's birth, wrote its death in the margins. What does it mean to love a weapon, to cradle a star while sharpening its edge? The answer lies in the void silence, where Sanctuary's fate waits primed. The Cathedral of Light spires claw at the heavens, his voice a hymn of old sins. Inarius returns in Diablo Roman 4 not as a resurrected figure, but as a recalibrated force. His dialogue carves through centuries of denial. Lilith's legacy is the key. He whispers not to salvation, but to a vault. The same vault his hands bound during the Sin War. What if the Nephalem were never meant to be children, but gears in a machine older than the Angiris Council's lies? Lilith's rebellion in Diablo Roman 4 isn't just defiance. It fractures the illusion that Inarius sought her love, he sought her blood, a conduit. A spark to ignite Sanctuary's chains. The Sin War wasn't a battle of hearts, it was a rehearsal. Inarius' love was a lever, every whispered promise a fulcrum. He didn't crave her loyalty. He needed her to bear a weapon he now seeks to reclaim. Diablo Roman 4 Act 5 unveils his plan. The Cathedral of Light isn't a sanctuary, it's a forge. Lilith's defiance wasn't the end, it was the first hammer strike on an anvil. Inarius' schemes never wavered. His love was a ruse to weaponize the one force that could bind Sanctuary forever. The truth is cold. Inarius' heart has never beat, it ticks, a metronome for conquest. The Nephalem's fate was sealed not by sin, but by the man who called it love. The forge of hell whispers his name, not in lament, in triumph. Inarius' fingers, once etched with celestial fire, now curl around chains that burn with the weight of his own making. Mephisto's whisper was not a temptation, it was a mirror. A reflection of the same hunger that had carved the Nephalem's first heartbeat from Lilith's womb. Love in his lexicon was a siege engine, each caress a calculation, each vow a vector. When he clasped Lilith's hand, did he feel the tremor of her blood or the crackle of a lock disengaging? The air in hell reeks of iron, sweet and thick as the sin he engineered. His fall was not a collapse, a pivot, a king who traded his crown for a key. Mephisto's chains are cold, Inarius are hot, they cut deeper. For what is a god's hubris if not a child's? To believe the weapon he forged could ever be a rose. The Nephalem's fate was not sealed by love's lie. It was etched by the hand that mistook its own shadow for a savior. The screams in hell have no end, but Inarius' echo does, it bends. A blade sharpened on the edge of forever. The blade's edge carved a covenant of ash. Inarius' love was a glyph etched in Lilith's Vainsa sigil to bind her Nephalem fire to his hollow crown. He did not court her, he curated her. Every whispered promise was a noose, every touch a map to the Worldstone's heart. When Mephisto cast him into the pit, Inarius did not weep, he brewed. In the sulfur dark he forged an elixir, Lilith's blood, the Worldstone's pulse, and the first Horadric flame. A trinity to shatter Sanctuary's walls, the tribunal that birthed the Horadrim, a gavel to crush his plans. Yet their oaths, sworn in fear of the sins, only sharpened the blade. Inarius' sin was not passion. It was arithmetic. He knew Lilith's defiance would fracture the heavens, knew her exile would make her a legend. A weapon needs not be held, it only needs to be feared. What blooms in the shadow of a god's gambit? A curse. The Horadrim hunted what they could not comprehend, a love letter written in the code of creation. Inarius' echo does not fade, it festers, a hymn of what power demands when it wears a lover's face. The Worldstone's light, a shroud, Lilith's flight, a spark. And Inarius, ever the archivist of ruin, wrote his name in the scars of a world that would never know his authorship. The archivist's ink bled into piracy. Inarius' obsession was not passion, but a cipher, a key turned in Lilith's Nephalem blood to crack Sanctuary's vault. The Pact of the Worldstone, forged on Tyrael's spared vote, became the anvil for a weapon sharper than Diablo's wrath. A love letter written in sin. The Horadrim's founding, the Sin War's ash, Diablo Roman 4 fractured axial threads of the same tapestry. Lilith's murder of Inarius was no rebellion. It was the first fracture in a dam built to hold what? A salvation, a prison. Sanctuary breathes, but its pulse is a wound. The chronicler now sees, every hymn to survival is a dirge for the thing that made it possible. The thing Inarius knew he could not unmake. You stand where the archivist stood, the stone whispers. What else have you mistaken for victory? What if the codex misread the wound as the blade? Inarius' hunger was not for love, but leverage. A host body, a bloodline key. He shaped her rebellion like a smith shapes steeluntil, her Nephalem fire turned on him. Act 5's blade was not betrayal, it was liberation. The Sin War's final weapon wore a lover's face. You hold the next page. What other truths have we mistaken for myth? The codex is N. What will you unwrite? The tribunal sealed sin. Inarius' love was a blade, What if the Horadrim's founding was a lie? A weapon forged in